There it is. So kia ora. Hi, everyone. Great to have you all for our 11th intergenerational meeting with some mega stars as part of the meeting, which is fantastic on both sides of the aisle. And the topic we decided to focus on during this meeting was the link between physical health and mental health. We didn't prepare necessarily any structure for it. So I'm guessing we could potentially start with a very broad question put to everyone that is in the meeting about your thoughts regarding this link between physical health and mental health. And I might start just following the order in which I see people on my screen. And that means sorry, but could I ask you about your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually kind of hoping you'd start with me because it's been a while since I got to join these meetings, and I just want to start by saying I'm really happy to see all of you. I'm really excited about today. And when I first heard about this topic, the first thing that I thought about was how, like in my own mental health journey, at least, improving my physical health overall, like over the time, has really improved my own mental health. So I was thinking about like approaching this topic on a more interventional level, but then I recalled, I guess it was in our World Mental Health Day Zoom party last year, Dr. Jenkins, I think it was you who gave the advice that in order to understand global mental health, we really need to understand the comorbidities that come with mental health conditions. So I had been like looking stuff up regarding that. And I think one of the conceptions that we come across throughout our medical education is that people view psychiatry as a discipline that is isolated from rest of medicine, as if what's going through the mind is not that related with what's going through the body. But the things that we have learned and the things that we experience and the literature out there disproves this over and over again. There is a very strong link between our physical and mental health. A lot of mental health conditions come with physical comorbidities. I have just like recently read a paper on how physical comorbidities are more common in how physical comorbidities increase patients' risk of readmission due to psychiatric conditions. And when you think about it, I think it just really makes sense in the sense that a lot of illnesses can present with mental health symptoms, such as, like, for instance, thyroid disorders is one of the things that we learn very early on in medical school. It can present with depressive symptoms, so it is a differential diagnosis, but also a lot of mental health conditions can lead to the development of physical disorders through just like having their impact on our ability to self-care or just go through with our activities of daily living. So there is a very strong link between those two, one that we should be very aware of and one that we should sort of master in order to become good doctors overall. And in addition to that, I think while treating mental illnesses, mental health conditions, even if a patient presents without any comorbidities to begin with, just the treatment processes, like for instance, the medications that we use, they have a lot of impact on other systems of our bodies. One thing that I can think of is like some certain group of medications we refer as antipsychotics. For instance, they can have metabolic side effects, and I think the right management of mental health conditions providing quality mental health care requires a vast understanding of that. So this is a topic that I have really come to appreciate over the years, and a lot more throughout the past year, thanks to you. So I'm very excited to have you all here today. And yeah, those are my few initial thoughts.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Rodrigo, may I say one small thing?
Yes.
While I was writing the topic, the idea of dividing physical and mental health came to be a problem, but I thought we could discuss it here. Some people may say, or maybe most of us may say, yeah, Unaiza, welcome. I couldn't hear what you said. Anyway, that may be something to underline. That's all I want to say for the beginning.
Thank you. Professor Javed, your thoughts about the links between physical health and mental health? Sorry, you're muted.
Thank you very much. And thanks again to you and Professor Koskan and this group for organizing and generating some more discussions on this important topic. Just a couple of thoughts. I still believe in that slogan that no health without mental health. So this means that even if we are talking about physical health, the role of mind, the role of psyche is even more important in many of the psychiatric disorders. And some of the experts like Rachel, Professor Koskan, and David, who are here, they will endorse me that that old concept of psychosomatic or somatopsychic was primarily to emphasize that psyche can affect your somatic systems and your somatic systems can affect your psyche. And we have got example of many illnesses which are directly or indirectly related to emotional well-being or emotional health. I mean, just to give an example, which I usually give to my students, look at the word hypertension. This is hypertension. So that clearly shows that how important tension, emotions, psychic health is related to our future sort of understanding of many of the mental illnesses. And then you talk about asthma, you talk about GI disorders, you talk about skin disorders. I mean, the list is endless, where if emotions are not 100% directly involved, at least 100% indirectly involved in increasing the symptoms, in sustaining the symptoms, and in perpetuating more distress for the patient. So this is very important. And I would like to take this opportunity that this dealing with comorbidity in mental illness has been one of the priority action plan agenda for this triennium for WPA. And among the, if you get a chance to go to the WPA website, when you go for the action plan priorities, this is one of the priority. And I have established a group which is chaired by Professor Norman Sartorius, and very, very eminent people in that group who are meeting very often, discussing about all these things. And a few months ago, we organized a specific webinar on this topic of comorbidity in mental health disorders. And similarly, we are giving due recognition to this particular issue in our congresses, in our meetings, and we want that specifically for non-psychiatrists. And for that reason, I would request Professor David Barron, because he is chairing an important section of WPA, which deals with the general practitioners, which deals with the primary physicians. And of course, with Professor Rachel Jenkin, who has spent her life in updating and uplifting the concept of mental health in the primary care. I would suggest two things. One is that for this group, if you just go to the WPA website, you will find a number of resources which are being put together by this action plan group on comorbidity in mental disorders. That is number one. That will give you a number of more ideas. Second thing is that if you go to the WPA's educational portal, which is free to join, you have to only enroll with your email. We have, during this year and the last year, we have prepared a number of educational modules. For example, hypertension and depression, cancer and depression. That is a very important educational resource, especially for our students and young psychiatrists on the topic of this comorbidity. And the last thing which I really want to request Dave and Professor Koskan, and especially to Professor Rachel Jenkin, WPA plans to do some ongoing webinars on these topics. And I spoke to Professor Norman Sartorius, who is willing to do that with his group. But more importantly, if we could involve the section chaired by Dave to organize a webinar, how can we link the importance of mental health for our primary care physicians? I, from the WPA, will be able to help in organizing that webinar. And of course, we will need support and help from this group, just specifically emphasizing how can we impart this particular education to our primary care physicians, to our non-psychiatrists. And Dave's section is very much relevant and appropriate for this activity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And yes, excellent. Just to reiterate that, yeah, there is access to resources on the WPA page. And we should definitely do a better job increasing the visibility of these resources to both colleagues and within psychiatry and in primary healthcare. Dr. Nias.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm now a little short-sighted. And what I mean is, I'm only concerned about my country right now. And we had the most devastating flood, which has submerged more than 1/3 of the country. And before I go, I must say some very good thing happened to our president, Afzal Javed. He's got it's a very special medal, you call it, a special recognition by Pakistan government. He's got Sitara Imtiaz, which is a great honor for a psychiatrist. And I think he's the first psychiatrist who's got, I think probably Bashir got it, but you definitely got it. And it's a great honor. I want to share it with you all that at last our country recognizes our people. It's so ironic that I think in our developing country, we do not recognize our heroes who really do it. And there's a lot of favoritism, and people who do not deserve it, they get it. And he's the first one. I follow him. I'm so proud of him. So number one, and I think on this forum, I wanted to say something. I think that you should include disasters and that is floods and, for example, these floods. You see, of course, we need money. We had a World Federation of Mental Health meeting, and they wrote a letter saying, we're very sorry about this, how can we help? And I know they don't have any money. Most of these organizations do not have money. So I said, I know you don't have money, I'm one of the directors. But what you can do, and I am also a trained trainer of trainers in disaster training of psychiatrists, psychological aspects, which a long time back, Mario Mai did it in WHO. But what I suggest, and I still suggest with David Barron and all you people, that please guide us, because we need, of course, we should do radio programs. We do not have televisions in these areas. The entire villages have been wiped off. The homes have been, I mean, it's like a doomsday, and so many people have died. We don't even know that, and there's a lot of political turmoil, awful. And I think all this with our nation is like that, and on top of that, this disaster. I felt very gloomy and depressed. Believe me, I couldn't move for 2, 3 days. And then there was this political drama. So what I'm trying to say is that there was increase. I just want to be a little haphazard. There was a definite increase. There's a definite increase in diabetes, blood pressure, as Afzal mentioned, Dr. Afzal, Professor or President mentioned, and there is a lot of increase in diarrhea and things like that. And people are not taking care of dengue, for example. They're there, they see the mosquitoes, they're not bothered. They couldn't care less. I mean, they are in that very suicidal state of mind. So, I mean, we should think from that point of view, that mind and body in these conditions also is there. And what can we do? The only thing which I think I'm just sharing is that we should have small messages on television, on radio, first of all, and these radios could be supply transistors, etc. Could be put in all the relief camps, and people can hear it. That it is definitely there, but then these are also natural disaster. It's not wrath of God simply, but we are all very sinful people. Maybe it's also wrath of God. I don't know, but it is also a natural disaster. It happens. People survive, and that then and if you say that, sometimes they have food, people don't eat food because their whole families died. So if you tell that and say people grow like what I did in earthquake, I said, look, in Japan, Japan was the Kyoto or whatever the city is, totally destroyed, and now it's the most technologically advanced city. So I kept on doing that, and the mullahs kept saying, the religious, they said, because there's one lesbian marriage between the two men or whatever, homosexual marriage, and they said this is also wrath of God. So I said, well, look, they may be doing all that, but God is not, because of two people, he's not going to punish so many people. So, you use those things, and these messages help people. So I'm going to ask you, it's haphazard. Can you suggest from this forum also, and also think when you're doing webinars, think of this aspect also. And David, I mean, maybe you can tell us something more. We are doing it. Mental health care is important, but I think the urgent awareness and support from besides the food, simultaneous support is that we will get out of it. We will get out of it, and this happens. This happens, and you will have sleepless nights. You will have visions of that period when the floods came, and your children just swept away, and you were there. You couldn't do anything. So I think I just wanted to say that maybe it's very maybe irrelevant, but I think it is related, mind and body. And there's a very large increase in cancer, breast cancer. Women are going a lot of breast cancer, and because they have small babies and they have to deal with them in these crises. So, and maybe Rachel can say, she's a woman. I couldn't recognize Rachel. My God, you look very dignified. Queen Elizabeth now. You've got gray hair now. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I'd like some help, some comments, some suggestions. Maybe think about it later. But really, we need help. We need help. I personally feel that I know what we should do later on once they're settled, etc. It's a long-term support system. But what else we can do immediately for the morale of the nation also,
Mm-hmm. And thank you very much for the reminder of our brothers and sisters in Pakistan who are going through such a hard time, and sending all the positive energy towards you. As you say, things are, in one way or another, things are going to get better, but what do we do now to accelerate that process or to prevent more negative outcomes in that near future? Could I move perhaps to ask Dr. Barron your thoughts? Sorry, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on some of the excellent remarks that were made and say something that might be viewed as provocative. I don't think there is a link between mental health and physical health. Because when we say there's a link, we're assuming there are two separate entities that are brought together. We talk about the link from the East and the West. If we're going to talk about the link between mental health and physical health, we should talk about the link between cardiac health and overall health. What I think we should focus on, and I'm going to base this on having just spent 6 weeks lecturing in rural Sabah, is mental health is a large piece of the puzzle of health, because link means that they're separate entities. And I think we have to be very, very cautious about the use of language. As many of you know, I do a lot of work in sports. I was working with the Malaysian Olympic team when I was over there, when I wasn't in the rural villages. And one of the big things that I was reminded of again is that we have to be we use words that are positive to us as psychiatrists, as mental health professionals. But in much of the society, much of the world, these terms conjure up prejudice, whether it's depression, anxiety, they mean something else. And so I believe we as leaders, as the future leaders in our field, need to be very cautious about the language we use. And I think we shouldn't be talking about the link, because that then assumes that they're separate, but that mental health is a big piece of the puzzle of health. As Afzal said, there is no health without mental health. They're one and the same. And it's a very large piece of it. The whole field of psychoimmunology, which is over 40 years now, I was trained as a CL psychiatrist, clearly demonstrates that how we feel, not mental health, but how we feel, has a direct effect on lymphokines, cytokines, chemokines, NK activity, NK number, essentially every measurement of the immune system. What could be more fundamental to health than our immune system? Without an intact immune system, we're dead. Look at HDOV3 back in June 681, what we know of AIDS. I believe what we really need to do is what Bulan and I and many others have done, and Afzal's been a champion of this, is we need to go beyond not just training our own psychiatrists, not just even training other specialists and physicians, but making this a public health, public policy issue. We need to engage teachers, politicians, sports figures. If you look at the data, the individuals that have had the greatest impact on the acceptance of depression and anxiety have not been any paper any of us have read. It's been marquee, world-renowned athletes who have come out and said, it's okay to not be okay, that this is a part of living. So one of the things that I've done is I've used athletes who the young people look up to, who middle-aged people look up to, actors, entertainers, and when they come out and say, this is a part of health and you need to take care of yourself. So I think we need to expand beyond primary care. I like to focus on primary care. That's my background. Most people have their interaction with their health, with their primary care physician. There's never going to be enough of us. There's never going to be enough psychiatrists. But how can we engage in those who are providing health? So when I just came back from Sabah, we went out to these very rural villages. We met with the chiefs who had really no formal education and talked about how they can get involved. And we didn't use the word depression or stress or anxiety. We talked about quality of life. How do we improve the quality of life? Because that's not so stigmatizing. If people say they're stigmatized by wanting to improve the quality of life for themselves or their children or their village members, then we've got other issues to deal with. So, and based on the comment we just heard, I did a 2-hour radio show in Kuala Lumpur, where one of the more popular, I'm sorry, it was in Sabah, one of the most popular FM shows. It was supposed to be a half-hour show. It turned into 2 hours. And what we talked about is the importance of taking care. And I didn't use the word depression or stress. I said, dealing with the issues that come up in life, whether they're geopolitical, whether they're familial, whether they're relationships. And we really talked about lifestyle psychiatry without using those terms. And I think what we need to do as a group, and I'm going to challenge all of us on this call and our wonderful president, who has really been a real champion of this throughout the years, is that what we need to do is translate what it is we do, what we know is effective and important, and not just have it be a well-kept secret or to constantly defend ourselves that, well, we deserve to be at the table. I think we need to change the mindset. A big piece, what we do, a big piece of that puzzle, engage everyone who's willing to listen to, really start very young. I was lecturing with young children. because by the time they get to be older, their mindsets are oftentimes set in stone. So we talked with teachers in the villages. How can these kids learn about what, I didn't use the term, but healthy lifestyle, the importance of getting a good rest, the importance of having a good diet, of taking care of yourself, underscoring the importance of having fun. Because we tend to threaten a lot. If you don't stop smoking, you're going to get cancer. If you don't eat right, you're going to, and threatening, as we all know, is really not the world's greatest motivator of behavior. Reward is. So I think we need to work on, as a group, how do we gamify? How do we make it fun or enjoyable? So people don't think like, oh, I've got to go on a diet, which means I restrict things I like so I can live longer. I've had people say, I'd rather live shorter, but enjoy what I eat. So I think we really need to focus on, it's just so important, that message, but how we deliver it. I don't believe we can allow ourselves anymore, our specialty, to be siloed and to say, well, we have a link to this. No, is that a link? We're part of it. It's, our arm isn't a link to our body. Our head isn't a link to the body. It's a part of it. And I'm going to challenge all of us to, when someone says, well, there's a really important link, I'm going to say, well, is there a link between your arm and the rest of your body? If it's only a link, okay. But that's not what mental health is. Mental health is like your arm. It's actually like your head, because that's where, people say, well, the pain's in my stomach. No, it's really not, because if we cut off your head, you wouldn't feel anything. All pain is pain in the head. So I'm going to challenge us all to do it in not a defensive way. I'm tired of feeling like we have to be defensive for what we do. And I really applaud our president, because he has taken a proactive stance. We don't want to be a member. We are a member of the healthcare team, not the mental health team. We do represent, and we want to work with them. And this is what I spent the last 6 weeks going out into we're not going to have doctors in the villages, but I actually got some of and when I worked with some of our great young up and coming stars, I'm so thrilled about where our field is going, because we have such brilliant young stars coming up who I know are going to take the lead. And there's wonderful things happening in Malaysia and in Sabah, because we have great students there who get it, and they're going out and engaging in the community. If we need the science, it's all there. Psychoneuroimmunology, PNI has been around a long time. It's hardcore data. It's as hardcore science as any part of the body. So it might be a little provocative, but that's the way we think we want to do it. Not to be defensive, but to educate and engage all the stakeholders. And the stakeholder group, I believe, primary care is very important, but we need to include, we were bringing in youth sport coaches, where I brought in a Tai Chi master. I got a chance to meet. So we're doing with healthy aging, because aging isn't an illness. It's a part of life. But yet, so we as behavioral health, as mental health specialists, as psychiatrists, how do we no, there's something very valued, the wisdom that we learn as we age, the insight that we have. So we're going to be working on developing Tai Chi in these rural villages, because people bond together in a social way. It's stress reducing from our part, but I think it really adheres to much of what we talk about in lifestyle psychiatry. So that's my challenge to the group. I'm old enough, but hopefully still have enough energy. I'm still so excited and passionate about what it is that we do, and feel so very fortunate that we all get the chance to really educate the world about what this is. And we're not a link. We're a critical part of what all health is.
Absolutely. And just before passing the mic to you again, Dr. Nias, perhaps to complement that, acknowledging that, yes, there is no health without mental health. And perhaps similarly, we could say that there is no way we can be healthy unless we're living in a healthy environment, a healthy ecosystem. So the health of our environment is similarly not linked to our health, but it's an intrinsic part of being healthy.
But you're right, and it's a good point you raised, that health isn't a set state. We talk about homeostasis and allostasis. So when we get sad, when we get down, when disasters come up, we need to acknowledge those. But just like when the body gets hot, it sweats so that it evaporates and we cool off. That life is constantly changing. The students have asked me over the what's the one state of being happy or no stress. Well, the only state I know of with no stress is death. There's probably not a whole lot of stress with death. At least I'm hoping on that. But as long as we're alive, it's about accommodating to the good and the bad. It's about the fundamental biology of emotional homeostasis and allostasis. And that's just as when the disasters come, what do we tend to do? We tend to come together to work together. And I think that that's kind of a societal, a sociologic way of dealing with homeostasis and allostasis. We can champion that because we understand how people think, feel, and behave. We can orchestrate that, working with all the stakeholders in a respectful way, that we are really have one thing as our kind of final goal, and that's the health, safety, and well-being of the entire human race. That we focus on the villages, but I think now is the time that we need to, and I've tried to do this, and many of our students are going to do it way better than I'll ever do it. But I'm excited to continue to change. I think we need to change the language, the words that we use in the dialogue. And I think if we do that, we can all feel very proud of a significant contribution that we've made that started way before anybody. My grandfather was friends with Sigmund Freud. And he used to tell me that Freud was a brilliant neuroanatomist and always talked about the brain as an organ, even though he ended up developing psychoanalysis. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity. It's a challenge that we all have, but an incredible opportunity that we should all feel very proud and privileged to be a part of addressing.
Thank you. Dr. Nias. Sorry, you're muted.
Dr. Barron, did you say you're the grandson of Sigmund Freud? Are you? Are you? We can't hear you.
Yeah, no, my grandfather. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No, my grandfather was friendly with Sigmund Freud. I have an autographed picture of him.
Okay.
When Sigmund's daughter came to Philadelphia, when Anna came to Philadelphia, she stayed with my grandfather.
Okay. Because I was very excited to see grandson of Sigmund Freud.
No.
Right.
Anna was his son. No, my grandfather was also a psychiatrist, Abe Barron. But he really understood the link. I mean, we think of psychoanalysis, but he was a brilliant neuroanatomist.
Yeah. I know that. Oh, thank you. Okay, I just wanted to say, I mean, it's a brilliant explanation, etc. What you gave. Today is this Suicide Day or whatever you call it. Today is 10th of September, and I was supposed to give lots of messages for the YouTube and different colleges, etc. Different programs, and they are having 7 webinars, etc. And I was going to suggest that, in fact, this desperation, in fact, I feel the school health is very important. We teach moral science, we teach right and wrong, ethics, manners, etiquette. I think we should also teach this hope and the connection between, as you said, I wouldn't use the word not connection, that when you feel worried, or for example, a child fails, and sometimes in Pakistan, it was very typical, in Karachi especially, people who failed the high school exam, they would go to the special bridge and jump and drown themselves because they were so embarrassed they didn't pass the high school thing, because the high school meant then they could become they could get in higher education, etc. A lot of competition, getting into specialized school, universities, etc. And I thought that if we start this from the very beginning, from the schools, about mental health, that when you're worried, if you have smallpox or whatever, you had typhoid, and you don't go to classes, obviously you miss out a little, you feel you're a little behind the others, whereas you were the top student, but it doesn't matter, you'll pick it up. As Churchill said, never give it up. So I think that sort of thing should be taught to students. And similarly, as you said, that if somebody has an illness and feels depressed and upset, should also know, obviously, I can't go to school, I can't be in an interview, I can't do that. So from the very beginning, if this mental health aspect is also included, not only in primary care, but in schools, some sort of small, maybe once in 3 months or 6 months, we can have an assembly where a psychiatrist can come and talk about these things. The children never worry. If you don't come first, it is not the end of the world. I mean, in my class, all those people, it's again, a very bad things I'm going to talk about Pakistan. A lot of favoritism. There were lots of professors' children. And so they would get the positions, whereas we who were the toppers would never get, we were in the merit list, but we wouldn't get the first two. But I knew I was good. My mother always said, forget it. You know, a star will always shine, a diamond will always, whatever. And then other thing is faith. My mother said, if you leave it to Allah, this is it. And so this sort of a thing also, because we are believers, I think this sort of a thing also should be told, even in these floods. I say, and I'll give you a little very funny little event. You know, and I was talking about all these seminars and giving these things. Yesterday, I was very tired. I've got a bad arthritis. I couldn't sleep and it was bad. And next morning, my receptionist calls and says, all these little cupboards you're saying in my clinic, they're inbuilt wooden things. And, you know, the whole thing fell down on the receptionist. And my TV, my best paintings, my little gnomes, whom I brought from Sweden and Amsterdam with a little certificate, even, you know, they're very expensive. They were all crashed. And my best mirrors and things, you know, I felt like that. And then I thought to myself, what's wrong with you, Neza? You know, people are dying, their homes have been flooded. And so what? Forget it, Allah will give, you know, and faith also came up. So what I'm trying to say, because this was taught to me as a child, so maybe also, David, I think we should also include it in school health also. Thank you. So I hope my clinic will be even better now. I'll have a clean wall and I'll have some lovely things. I'll have wooden floor. It will be wider and nicer without those humongous things. So I'm looking at positive things, you see, and life does change. Things do change and we should keep changing. But it is only because we have knowledge here and we're using it. So I think with primary health, I think we should also include school health.
Thank you very much. And that actually hints also at something that I was thinking perhaps to ask everyone again afterwards. After having discussed the very, I'm trying not to use the word link again between physical health and mental health, which is how do we think about mental health not just as the absence of mental illness, but something that has substance within itself. Yeah. Exactly. But before that, Dr. Jenkins, would you mind sharing your thoughts about the connection between mental health and physical health?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for raising the issue of the floods, because we've all been thinking of you.
Thank you.
It's been one of the worst disasters ever, and I remember Professor Mubashir, who you mentioned earlier. I'd been teaching for him in Lahore, and he asked me to go to Islamabad for a week because it was 2005, I think, or it was 2004. It was just after the earthquake. It was 3 months after the earthquake. And I had the opportunity to go up, well, to work in the WHO office for a while and to go up into the mountains. But I do remember that there had been this thing that, people thought it was a punishment from God. And these poor women who had lost, 6 or 7 children with the same school collapsing, and were all in the total shock that you describe. But the army medical and psychiatric teams, because it was the army who were doing a lot of coordinating up there, and they took along some geologists to explain about tectonic plates and that this wasn't a punishment from God. This was why it had happened, and found that very helpful. So I don't know whether something like that is helpful with the flood, but it does seem to be a big problem if people feel that it's a just deserved punishment. It's not helpful. The other thing I would say was that I don't know if you remember, but in somewhere between about 2009 and 12, Rizwan Taj and I had a British Council grant, which did several things. One was it trained lots of trainers for primary care who were specifically focused for the rural areas. So Rizwan will still have that list of trainers. And I've kept meaning to get in touch with him and hadn't, but I think they could be mobilized if they're not already mobilized. so that was one thing. After this, I will connect up with him and you to because I'm sure that he will have been thinking about that. The other thing was that you mentioned schools, which I agree is very important. And I wondered if we could take as a topic at some future point the whole school approach to mental health promotion, which does seem to be the most effective way to approach mental health in schools. And Rizwan and I did train some trainers in Pakistan in collaboration with the Federal Ministry of Health, who chose the trainers. Again, this was 10 years ago. So, but there will still be some there who are active. So it would be a focus that could be built on, I think, in Pakistan. But I know there have been randomized controlled trials of the whole school approach in low and middle income countries, and it is effective. So it'd be nice if we could discuss that in detail. Coming back to the topic of today, one of the things I've been going to say, and in a way, UNESA's intervention on Pakistan has brought it to life, is that we shouldn't just think physical and psychological. It's physical, psychological, and social always. The social factors are always there, both for mental and physical health problems. So it's intertwined. This is why the role of primary care is so important. But I think it's difficult to think physical and psychological without always thinking about the social and the environmental. Because, you know, as with the flood, we've now got a massive environmental problem impacting on both physical and mental health. So it was to kind of argue, to think, biopsychosocial in terms of causes and in terms of consequences, because they're very, very intertwined. I came along with lots of slides, but I don't think we have time to go through them, but there's plenty of material that the students could go through to look at the relationships. The other thing I wanted to echo was David Barron's point about the immunology. It looks as if these relationships, many of them, are actually mediated by cytokines and these kind of chemical mediators of immunity. Particularly TNF alpha seems to be a major culprit, so to speak. So it really is, as several of you are saying, it's like it's one bodily condition which has physical and psychiatric manifestations. We're not talking about two separate things a lot of the time. We're talking about one biological process with physical and mental manifestations, symptoms, progress through the body. So yeah, I think those were the main points I wanted to make at the minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. The link not only between the body and the mind, and I'm fully aware of, that is a misrepresentation to say a link as suggesting a separation. And the same thing with the social determinants of health or the environment in which the person is living. This is not connected with, but it's an intrinsic part of it. And larger ecosystem as well. And the spiritual, as it was highlighted on the chat as well, of course, and faith and belief. Ramin, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah. First of all, it's good to see many faces this time around. Yeah, I think I missed the last one, and I think the previous one we didn't have many people who were available. But yeah, I think one of the things that I found interesting was the indirect connection. I'm trying to avoid the word link as well. But yeah, the indirect connection between mental and physical health, such as the causes that we've discussed, the social causes, the isolation, when people are diagnosed with either a mental health condition or a physical health condition, there is a tendency for them to self-isolate, and it might cause one or the other, or it might lead to one or the other. Some of the predispositions in the first place, for example, physical inactivity, which causes them to develop certain physical health conditions, as well as it's a predisposing factor for things like depression, anxiety, and so on. So I just found it interesting because it sort of reflects, or it sort of mirrors our understanding of CBT in a way, where one thing links to another, where our thoughts affects our emotions, and our emotions affects our behavior, and so on. So it's sort of like this I'm not sure how to put it, but both of it are synergistically affecting each other in a way. And the final point that I'd like to just agree on is the fact that we brought up, if the absence of mental illness is actually mental health. So I think there's many definitions of health according to WHO and many other organizations, and it's never described as the absence of illness. So I think the same thing goes for mental health, because of course mental health is a part of health in general. So yeah, that's just a few of my thoughts. Apologies, I'm having a really bad throat, so I might not be able to talk too much. Yep.
No worries. Thank you very much. Sorry, I passed the mic on to you, and you have shared that with us, and I just put you on the spot. Anyway, but thank you for sharing your thoughts, and you're absolutely right. This, how we have been trying to summarize a little bit before asking Roshda her thoughts. I think we have been discussing how the presence of physical illness expresses also in mental health terms. Sometimes the presence of a mental illness also expresses itself in physical terms. And so there is this clearly direct link between having hypothyroidism affecting one's behavior and having depression affecting the immunological response. But at the same time, there's also this indirect connection between both, where having a physical illness might lead to not going to a primary a mental health professional and delaying the diagnosis of a mental health issue. And the same thing the other way around, having a mental health issue might lead to overweight and other things that have, again, an indirect impact on one's physical health. And these, again, all contextualized within, as we were saying, that if we focus exclusively on the individual, we are not seeing the whole picture. We need to put the individual in a social context to have a good understanding of the situation, because these things that don't happen in isolation. And then again, to further expand that picture to include the ecosystem and the environment as well, to have an even fuller picture of the situation. Roshda must have had an issue with her connection, but Irem, are you there? Would you like to share your thoughts?
I think Roshda had to leave. May I say a few words? And Irem may have a problem. Rodrigo, may I?
Yes, please.
Yeah. After your avoiding using this word link, I would like to ask David, should we not use that? We can sometimes talk about link between our mind and our arms. So it's we may not avoid, but this is the routine way of underlining these issues, physical and mental health issues. So maybe for the public at least, we can start with this and discuss and underline what you have said, the importance of their being together and mental health being a large part of the whole health. Yeah, no health without mental health. I recalled while we were discussing these, Dr. Sartorius once during one of his speeches said, there is no social psychiatry. I mean, we were surprised what was he talking about. He said, psychiatry is already social, so there is no social psychiatry. When you hear this part, you agree with him. And maybe when David says no link, it's already there, it's a similar approach. And there was another remark made by Ramin. Now our section is being part of a transsectional work about climate change. We may also maybe focus on that if anybody would like to add. Unaiza has already underlined the importance of, and Rachel did, different aspects of factors affecting health or affecting mental health. Well, for teaching, Unaiza asks, what can psychiatrists do about these, the corruption or the negative effects of decision makers? I'm afraid we don't have much to do as psychiatrists, but as people, we can do our best to enlighten others. That's my thought. Thanks.
Bulan, my dear friend, I want to challenge you on that last statement. I think there's a lot we can do. And one of the things I think we can do is teach our brothers and sisters how to listen. That we go in, we have all the answers. We know people are doing this and this. The first thing I did when I went to the villages is I asked the village chief and the people in the village, I thank them for allowing me to learn from them, but tell me what the issues are. Because what are the issues in Los Angeles are very likely not the issues in the middle of the jungle in Borneo. So I think we can teach our colleagues. We're taught as medical students, when people talk to us, we get the right answers. I think our field, our specialty, we learn how to listen. Rachel and I know many in the fields, we're trained as CL psychiatrists, consultation liaison. The first thing we do when we get called on a consult is we ask the internist, the surgeon, how can I help you on this case? Because I think what we can bring is that we need to listen. And one of the things I think is very important is when disasters happen, it's what are the local needs? Sometimes I think we go in, and I've been humbled many times to think that we have the answers. No, I probably don't even have the right questions. But if I listen, maybe then we'll get the right questions and we can mobilize all the resources, all the stakeholders. So I know what you were saying, but I think we bring a very important thing that it needs to be culturally sensitive. What are the needs of the villages? What do they need? It's not what I need, it's what they need. And I know you've done this because you're the one that taught me this years ago in Turkey when they had the earthquake. You're the one who went in and taught me. It's not about what we want to collect data and do this and that. You taught me that we go there and we ask, what are the needs and how do we help achieve those needs? So I need to give you credit for this sentiment.
Well, what about the politicians or decision makers? How can we keep them away or make them aware of the issue of corruption? Do you have an answer for that?
Well, I met with many politicians. In fact, the last person I met with before I left was a politician. And the one thing I've learned working in Washington is politicians always have one thing on their mind, and that's how it will affect their next election. So when I spoke to politicians, I told them how this could really be a tremendous boom for their next election. I told them how they could use it as they're doing this, and this is a cheaper way to buy votes that you're not going to go to jail for. So, as we say in the States, when in Rome, do like the Romans. I met with I got my pictures with them for the walls with ministers, Minister of Health, Minister of Sport, Minister of Education. We met with the head of all the NGOs for the country. And when I talk to them, I don't talk about stress reduction. I don't talk about, I talk about how this can save money because it's much cheaper. HMOs in the United States demonstrated if you keep people healthier, you save a lot of money than treating them for end-stage disease. And I always brought it back to what's in it for them, how this will affect their next election in a very positive way, not critical of them, because we speak a different language. That's why I think we are experts in understanding the value of words and how we use them. We do that as teachers. And I've made a point of saying when I went to the Olympic Village, I wanted to meet the head of of what he thought about it. And he wasn't so sure. And I said, no, this is going to help you win gold medals. That 20-minute meeting turned into a 2-hour meeting. So I believe we understand what motivates people in a positive way. And whether it's lifestyle psychiatry, whether it's a positive outlook. And I think this is something that Afzal has done as our president exceedingly well, is he appeals to things that make you feel good in a good way, taking the positive approach, not that punitive approach. And I will tell you, the politicians, and in fact, the head of the radio show asked me to do another radio show because I said, this is going to help your ratings, that you're going to get people calling in. So he showed up at the next lecture I gave the next day because that motivated him. Now, once we get them motivated, maybe they can change their attitude a little bit. But I told him, you're way more important than I'll ever be because you're reaching people every day. And I'm none of them going to read any of my papers or my books. My students don't read my papers or my books. They barely should stay awake at the lectures. But you, as a radio show host, are a critical part of this. You're very important in this. You get the word out. And if we can work together, but you're the important one, not me, because you're the one that can have the impact. I hopefully can help you do it in a way that is in everyone's best interest.
Thank you very much. I think it highlights again the broadness of our field, which we could think about it in terms of individual interaction within an office and this clinical one-on-one care, but it goes even before that from the studies of neurotransmitters and all the way up to public health and social determinants of health. And we were talking about this trisectional working group that is focusing on climate change, and that's all our field of action. That's it, and within that there is also policies and politics and corruption and stigma and all of that falls within our field of action and our professional responsibility to speak against and to try to understand better and to address when necessary.
You should always remember it's not bench to bedside when we talk about translational, because that assumes it's only within the hospital. What I think we should do, and Rachel and I have discussed this on other forums, and I've talked about it should be molecules to Main Street. Molecules being at the most basic molecular level, what can we learn? But it shouldn't end up at the bedside. It should be Main Street. It should be politics, education, entertainment, public policy. So I think what we do is, as psychiatrists, and I'm very proud to be a psychiatrist, we work with all our brothers and sisters in other fields, interdisciplinary, interprofessional, but we respect what we learn at a molecular level, but it doesn't end at the bedside. It should really end at Main Street, which is public policy and education and all the things we've been talking about. And I think we have a very unique role to provide that broadened expansion of what really health should be from a translational perspective. And it kind of ties it all together. So again, Rachel has done so much great work at an international level, not just in her home country, but really internationally, in being, one of the people who, I think has been a real leader over the years. Rodolfo one of our dear friends who actually was involved with this WPA section years ago, is that we need to get and talk to each other and be very mindful of the power of what we say, in a negative way to create more prejudice, but hopefully in a positive way to bring us together as an integrated whole.
Thank you very much. And I think that was a great way of connecting everything together, and turning down the wall between this unfortunate simplistic framework that we often use, and we kind of know the origins of it, this idea of a split between the body and the mind that has led to the notion of physical health and mental health as existing separately. But then again, also this very simplistic framework of mental health or mental illness being a very individual thing, something that happens within and that can be treated then also just within, or with changes in one's own behavior without acknowledging the huge impact of your neighborhood or your home. And then again, also amplifying, enlarging a little bit our lens to be able to have a better picture of the situation and understanding the huge impact of climate change in all of that, and policies as well. I guess before closing, I would like to ask if there are any final thoughts or anything anyone would like to add to the conversation.
I would just like to appreciate the extent of the conversation we had today and reiterate the points you made just now. It has been really wonderful. Like, we started out as a simplistic title, The Link Between Mental and Physical Health, and we challenged this concept itself, and we touched on cultural humility, spirituality, the impact of climate change, the stigmatization of mental health. And I kind of felt like, as we discussed through as we went through these discussions, it was like touching upon all the things that we have discussed throughout the year in our past IGMs and on other events under VPA. And it's just really wonderful to see how all of it ties in. And I think it's just amazing that we get to discuss it with this diverse group. And to the people who are watching, I highly recommend them to check our previous IGMs, because especially the ones on stigma, the cultural relativity and integration of, cultural diversity and integration of primary care. I think they also touch upon these topics, and like all of them are good, but they are especially relevant. And thank you all for joining today. It has been a wonderful discussion.
Thank you. Dr. Nias.
And I just wanted to say, David, if I looked like you and I was convincing like you and I was a man, I'd do the same thing in Pakistan. But you see, we have all these mullahs and these huge men with big beards, and I go and say something, haram, haram, and I'd be somewhere and probably lynched. So I can't do it, unfortunately. But there is so much corruption. These landlords, they turned the water towards the villages, and villages were drowned. And the dams weren't built. The money was all eaten up by these politicians. So I'm sorry, I'd love to do what you're doing, and I'd love to, and I'm sure they listen to somebody like you. But me, they look at me, my clothes, and say haram, haram, and being a woman, so I'm sorry, I can't do anything. I wish you could come, some man in Pakistan could do that. Anyway, sorry, joke. It will never happen. I think third world country, things don't happen that way. You're lucky you're in the first world.
Unais, Afzal can do that after having this award.
Afzal can do it. That Afzal anyway is lucky. He can always go back to England. You see, but if had he been in Pakistan, he wouldn't be able to do it. We have to have somebody like David Barron.
I think what Professor Uneza Niaz is saying is right. But at the same time, we must appreciate and acknowledge all our professional colleagues.
Thank you.
All our professional colleagues who are working even in the adverse circumstances. I mean, we need not to be discouraged.
Yes, the good bit.
Yeah, the good bit. And then let's try to continue with our efforts. For example, this particular meeting, which Professor Koskan and his colleagues have started with patronage of Dave, I think this is the best way to, first of all, sensitize our medical students, our professionals, non-psychiatrist colleagues. And once we are able to convince them, then the next most important thing, which as a president of WPA, I am trying to request all member societies, you must have a patient carers and families group in your society.
Yes, yes.
So
yes,
let's try to use them, not in a bad way, but let's try to convince them that we are on your side. And our medical students, which are going to be the future custodian of health, they need to be approached and emphasized that, look, we don't want, although we want, but we may not get all of you becoming psychiatrists. But if you are sensitized to psychiatry, if you know what is mental health, I'm sure we will be able to do that. So there is no disappointment. I mean, look at this group, the vibrant and very active medical students. Keep it up, keep it up. Don't worry, Professor Unaiza Niaz. We have got leaders like Professor Koskan and Professor Barron. We will follow their advice and try to do as much as we can do. And of course, with Professor Jenkins' advice, who has spent her life, especially her work, is remarkable in low and middle income countries. Let's try to publicize this work. And I would really like to pass on this message to all of you, that if you have got any educational material you want to share with our psychiatrist or non-psychiatrist colleagues, our WPA educational portal is at your disposal. Please send whatever you want to send to us, and we will add to our educational portal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Just to say thanks to everyone. And yes, see you in our next intergenerational meeting. And thanks again for being here. And again, just to share positive thoughts and good energy towards you, Dr. Niaz, and to all the people in Pakistan. All the best in these hard times.
Sorry, Professor Koskan, if you have already done it, I think we must acknowledge the good services of late Professor Diva, who left us, who died in the month of August. I mean, he was really, really a pioneer and supporting mental health, not only in Asian countries, but all over the globe. True. So I'm sure that the work which has been started by Professor Diva, all of us are trying to follow that.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. We tried to acknowledge that in the previous IGM.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course, but thank you for reminding that. Before ending, may I also try to remind that the next one will be a Zoom party on 10th of October, our second Zoom party. And we have connection with World Federation for Mental Health. They are going to announce our activity, and we'll try to at least somebody to represent World Federation for Mental Health in our Zoom party. We will try to have 3 hours or a bit more so that people from different regions can participate and contribute. We will communicate about this and announce it on our social media through our active friends like Ramin and other young colleagues. Thank you for being together with us. Thanks, Rodrigo, for all your efforts, David, Rachel, and our president. Anyway, Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Bülent, for giving us the opportunity. Yes, it's been really lovely. Thank you, everybody, for the kind words. I'm sorry, Afsal's just